According to Julio, Fantasmas means ghosts, which is true if we're translating Spanish to English. Of course, we're dealing with the same etymological root with this word as with fantasy or phantasm, and I think it's worth noting how the term connotes something illusory, an apparition perhaps. Ghost might bring to mind something more substantial. It has a different etymology, related more to breath than vision, but I'm not trying to make a distinction intended to carry a lot of weight. These meanings are pretty well jumbled by the history of language. Still, I'd feel inclined to push back along these lines if any overzealous translator decided to change the title of Julio Torres' new HBO series from Fantasmas to Ghosts. There's a dreamlike quality to the premiere of Phantasmas, which I expect to continue through its run. Nothing feels quite real. That's not to say it's fake. What is the reality of a dream or a fantasy? The world we're thrown into is clearly not our own. We're probably in the future, since Julio has a robot assistant named Bebo, but it doesn't quite feel like the point. Maybe we'll learn that there are dystopian requirements to getting a proof of existence, or maybe it will be largely equivalent to what it takes to get a real ID. Either way, Julio doesn't have one. He's resisting the expectations of reality that threatens to close in on him. This would be my straightforward interpretation of Julio's dream, or at least the end of it. The walls are closing in, and his only way out is to take off his fancy hat, put on a boring puffer coat, and blend in with nondescript others walking through the snow. I'll be curious to see what Julio learns from the dream analysis kit he's planning to submit, but I'd be surprised if it didn't include something along these lines. Julio is feeling pressure to conform. Julio gets a dream analysis kit from Chester, though Chester's main gig is driving for a ride sharing app where they would seem to be the only driver. It's not an Uber, it's a Chester. One wonders about the logistics, but I get the impression that Chester is perhaps still quote unquote working for Uber, but then trying to shuffle people to their own thing. I'm not sure how much it matters. You can sketch the outline of the plot from Phantasma's S21. Julio keeps ignoring envelopes marked urgent. Meebo finally reads one of the letters and tells Julio that he's going to lose his apartment because the building is going to be turned into a General Mills residency. That's going to be a problem. But what makes Phantasmas enjoyable doesn't really have to do with its plot. This lies in the show's colorful characters and in the weird vignettes that form most of its premiere episode. First, we have the sitcom that plays in the back seat of Chester's car, Melf. It starts as a clear send up of Alf, with a large puppet named Melf appearing in a family's living room one night. Melf loves to eat cookies and spaghetti, but Melf also falls in love with the father of this clan, Jeff. The two begin to have an affair, which they hide from Jeff's wife, Nancy, until she finds them making out in a closet one day. Jeff and Nancy get divorced. Tabloids flash on screen about how an alien has stolen a man from his wife. And then we cut to 17 years later to see Toast come to visit Jeff to inform him of Toast's impending marriage. Jeff fumbles over the fact that Toast is marrying a woman, and Toast says that Melf won't be welcome at the wedding. Then Melf returns with groceries. Jeff steps out to unload the car, and Melf and Toast have a laugh about eating cookies and spaghetti. Couple of things here. I purposely avoided pronouns in the last couple of paragraphs because I don't think Melf's gender is made clear, and I don't want to make presumptions when it comes to Toast. River Ramirez uses they them pronouns. Place those here. So perhaps that would have been safe, but there's a difference between the character and the actor. More to the point, while this Melf sequence in Phantasmas S21 is absurd in a lot of ways, Julio seems to speed run the entire series over the course of a few minutes in Chester's car, for example. I do think it employs Milk to interrogate questions about gender, and I'm not claiming that there's a thesis here. Indeed, what makes Phantasmus distinctive is how it operates in a space of play. More about gender comes into play in Mina's episode 1 storyline. As a school teacher, she ends up using the boys' bathroom one day after hours and notices a bit of penis graffiti that lodges itself in her brain as a question. This penis seems to be turned away in shame. Who drew it and why? We get the answer in the form of a bully named Michael. In an honest and vulnerable moment, he tells Amina that while she sees him as a jerk, he's actually a jerk so that he's seen. She hugs him, but the other students notice, so he pushes her away, calls her a bitch, and then pushes another student to the floor. In itself, this would amount to a hurt people moment that might feel like a bit of a cliche, but Phantasmus redoubles it once Amina returns home. Her boyfriend whines about how she's talking to him, and Amina sees the ashamed penis drawing superimposed over his body as he lies on their bed. Now we have something to think about with regard to feigned masculinity and the absence of confident masculinity. Again, no thesis here. We're in a state of play. When Amina and Julio share Chester, she asks him what he does in parallel to how she's a teacher. His response is that he Julio's. His agent, Vanessa, the J is silent. Julio says the performance artist he hired to be his agent, but who has been doing it so long she's become an actual agent, elaborates. Today, Julio was a consultant for Crayola. Tomorrow, he'll be consulting with NASA about new names for constellations. It's a special way of seeing the world. You saw a session with Crayola at the top of Cookies and Spaghetti. It consisted of Julio being asked to make facial expressions for a series of colors, which all seemed pretty spot on, to be honest, and then suggesting that they make a clear crayon, clear as a color. It's around us all the time. Look at this glass of water. The Crayola guys seem relatively into the idea, but wonder what to call it. Phantasmas, Julio replies. Shouldn't it be singular? Fine. But then the show's title card drops to tell us he doesn't really think so. Julio offers Amina another example of how Julio's as they share their ride. The letter Q comes too early in the alphabet. It should be later with the other weirdos like X, Y, and Z. And in an extended fantasy sequence, we see Q, played by Steve Buscemi, bombing as a musical act and being led to desperation. He's thinking about selling out and becoming an O. X, Y, and Z become popular, and that just makes him feel worse until Z gives him a shout out on TV saying that they'd be nothing without the way Q paved the way, always remaining true to himself. Somehow, I'm convinced by all of this. Julio's right. Q does come too soon in the alphabet. What an odd thing to be persuaded about. Through its first episode, Phantasmus is quirky, surreal, fun, and fun. Me, those are all different things. But the show blends them all together and its styles. That has me hooked more than anything else. Julio will probably get evicted, and maybe he'll have to get that proof of existence he doesn't want to get, but I hope not. Either way, I hope Julio can keep Julioing. Feels good. Feels like there's hope. Maybe like that. Maybe that's a fantasy. But this is Phantasmos.